Before I started at Donut, I was a muscle car boy. I didn't know about anything else, but the longer I've been here, the more I like the import scene. So I wanted to make an episode all about the different kind of import tuner cars out there, which caused a bit of an argument in the office, because what I thought were tuners weren't. So that got me thinking, what does tuner car even mean? It could be argued that the very first tuners were the hot rodders of the 1950s and the 60s. They would soup up old coupes and roadsters from the pre-war era and race them on the streets and salt flats of America's West. But including hot rods on my list opens up a whole can of worms. How I like to think of it is that everyone who modifies their car technically is a tuner, but not every car that's touched by a tuner is a tuner car. Generally speaking, tuner can be used to describe a lot of different cars with differing characteristics. But before we get into each category, I think it's worth learning a little bit of history to get some context. In the early 90s, street racing was popular across the US, especially in metro areas like Los Angeles and New York City. These races were all about bragging rights, but cash was also on the line too. The next day, the illicit street racers would go legit and stay undercover at their day jobs, and their co-workers were none the wiser. This lifestyle was the inspiration for a screenwriter named Gary Scott Thompson, the scribe behind a little movie called The Fast and the Furious, also known as one of my favorite movies of all time. I 100% mean that unironically. The rest is history. With the breakout success of The Fast and the Furious, tuner culture exploded in popularity all over the country. Racing games like Need for Speed Underground and Midnight Club let you wreak havoc on the streets just like Dom and Brian. Traditional car magazines like Hot Rod were covering tuner cars as well, as long as they were American made. Everyone wanted in on that life. But a lot has changed since then. It's been 18 years since the first Fast and Furious came out, and the tuner community at large has split into so many different groups, all with different influences and goals. So to find out what tuner car means today, we need to look at a bunch of different scenes. Not from the movie, like scenes. First up are the proper import drag cars. I want to point out right now, I'm not old enough to remember what I'm about to start talking about. I was a literal child in the late 90s, not the figurative man-child that I am today. I bought a BMX bike for my 26th birthday. People like Stephen Papadakis were leading the drag strip charge. He had come up in the SoCal street racing scene and made the transition to the track. The drag strip allowed for a lot of experimentation and tuning, and soon, Steven was building a car purpose-built for the quarter mile, never intended to drive on the street. Steven and his buddy Sean started hacking up a 91 Civic. Before they knew it, the boys had built a full tube chassis powered by a turbocharged Honda H22 engine, making about 600 horsepower. In 1999, Steven set the first ever 9-second quarter mile in a Honda, and that changed the whole darn game. This was a car based on economical commuters, and it was running with them big block boys. That made people mad. Steven's yellow Civic marks the golden age of tuning, when drag strip domination was the goal. The first import tuners were mainly drag cars. These are what people imagined when you use the term import tuner. But if you go on Import Tuner Magazine's website right now, you're gonna have a hard time finding a drag car. That's because after Stephen Papadakis' triumph, a new trend was about to find its way to American shores and forever change the tuner world. And it's all thanks to one of them Japanese anime cartoons. Drifting was jump-started in large part by one man known as the Drift King. Kaiichi Tsuchiya was a race car driver who would spend his free time throwing his AE86 Corolla around mountain turns over in Japan. Because the roads were so narrow and turns so tight, the fastest way around them was to slide the rear end out like a rally car of the Group B days. Drifting was born. Drifting has exploded in popularity since first coming here on VHS. Grassroots events and organizations flourish alongside big-time leagues like Formula Drift. Hey, if you've never gone to an FD event, do yourself kindness and check one out. They're super fun. I love it. It's seriously the best. So much fun to watch. Anyway, because drifting is pretty much impossible in a front-wheel drive car, drift cars are exclusively rear-wheel drive. Today, they can be characterized by having steel tubing front bash bars, extreme steering angles, and bumpers held together with zip ties. Drift cars are set up to go sideways and look good doing it, but for the most part, form gives way to function. These things get beat up a ton, especially drift missiles, which are only focused on drifting. People with drift missiles don't care what the car looks like at all. It's just all about that slidey boy stuff. But what if you don't want to go sideways? What if you want to go the absolute fastest you can around a racetrack? Well, my friend, time attack might be for you. In a time attack event, you aren't racing against other cars. It's only you and the clock. Time attack cars aren't necessarily only foreign. Any car set up for time attack is a time attack car. You can usually spot them sporting enormous aero elements like spoilers, air dams, and canards. Since they don't have to worry about bumping into other cars, time attack guys usually go all out with the aerodynamics to maximize grip. These things look insane. So if time attack cars aren't strictly Japanese import tuners, then why the hell am I talking about them? Well, lately they've been a pretty strong influence on the scene. In the same way that the Fast and the Furious inspired people in the early aughts to put big dumb spoilers on their dailies, the rising popularity of time attack has had a similar effect. But instead of chintzy spoilers from AutoZone, you can find canards, chassis mounted spoilers, and air dams at car meets all over the country. And before you tell me, drivers will never go that fast to take advantage of all that aero, I'm gonna stop you right there because guess what? They know. They just like how it looks. There's actually a big trend in the import scene around outfitting a car with tons of legit racing parts, but never really tracking the car, which some people call hard parking. I don't know if the owners would really appreciate that. Like, oh, thanks for calling my car good at parking. Sounds like I'm making fun of it, but I'm not, I promise. I just think people are allowed to do whatever they want with their cars and shouldn't have to justify it. Speaking of which, let's talk about perhaps the most controversial scene in import ever, stance. You knew this was coming. The super low suspension, the deep dish wheels, the insane camber. These are all traits that define a stanced ride. A lot of people hate this style because it absolutely makes the car worse, at least in the performance department. The negative wheel camber severely reduces the tire's contact with the road, which reduces grip significantly. When people stance out sports cars, haters can get pretty salty, and I understand. What's the point of modifying a sports car if you're gonna take the sports part of it out? Is that really worth making it look cool? Yeah, because stance is all about style. I know this has kind of turned into the Nolan Defends Stuff show, but I don't feel bad about it when it comes to stance. Is it a fad? I thought so back in 2011, but people are still doing it today. Does it deserve the hate? No, look, people are gonna do things that you're not gonna like or agree with, but if they're not hurting you or others, then leave them alone. So what is a tuner? I think as time goes on, that question gets harder and harder to answer. There might be someone out there right now who has a front-wheel drive Civic making 600 horses just like Stephen Papadakis, but with a bash bar up front and a bumper held together with zip ties in the back. They've got canards and a chassis-mounted spoiler and stance the frick-out rear wheels. This car might not fit into any one box, but you can tell what influenced it. I guess no matter what you call it, I think it's easiest just to call it cool. Big thanks to Raycon earbuds for sponsoring this episode of WheelHouse. You know, I love listening to music, but sometimes earbuds don't fit in my ears. Oh, this is sick. Or the sound isn't that great. That's what I love about my Raycon E50 earbuds. They fit my ears comfortably, and they sound amazing. Wait a minute, here comes a drop. Here comes a drop. It's coming. They look sleek and stylish, and the best part is they're about half the price of other premium earbuds in the market. All that bumping for half the price, you can't beat that. Which is sick. Go ahead and click the link below and get an additional 20% off your Raycon earbuds. I love these things. I wish you guys could hear this. It's a sick beat. Thanks for watching WheelHouse. I had a lot of fun looking into each different kind of segment and finding out what I like about it, what I don't like, but I think overall, if someone puts a lot of time and money into building their ride how they want it to, I think that deserves to be respected. Follow me on Instagram at Nolan J. Sykes. Follow Donut at Donut Media. Check out last week's episode of WheelHouse right here. Check out Up to Speed right here. Be nice. See you next time.